I matched with a guy named Lucas, who was almost too perfect. He was attractive, charming, had a stable job, and even loved dogs as much as I did. We talked for weeks, and every time I felt like something might be off, he'd say or do something to make me trust him again. We eventually planned a date at a trendy new restaurant downtown. He was late, which annoyed me, but when he finally arrived, he was as charming in person as he was over text. Everything was going well, until halfway through the meal, he started asking strangely personal questions. Things like, how often do you lock your windows at night? And, do you live alone? I laughed it off, thinking he was just awkward, but my gut told me something was wrong. After dinner, he insisted on walking me to my car. I told him no, that I was fine, but he was persistent. When we got there, he stood too close and asked, "You'll text me when you get home, right?" I nodded, got in, and locked the doors. That's when I noticed it, a sticky note on my windshield. It had my name written on it, with a message underneath. Found you first. Remember? I looked up, and Lucas was still standing there, smiling. But it wasn't the charming smile from earlier. It was cold, knowing. I drove off, heart pounding, and blocked him on everything. A week later, I noticed someone had followed me on a new social media account I just made. The profile name? Found you again. I matched with a guy named Ethan. He was cute, a little quirky, and seemed genuinely interested in me. After a few days of talking, he told me he was a nurse working long hours, so meeting up would be tough for a while. One night, I mentioned in passing that I wasn't feeling well. Almost immediately, Ethan offered to come by and bring me medicine. It was sweet, but also strange. We hadn't met in person yet. I politely declined, but he kept insisting. "Just send me your address," he said. "I'll drop it off and leave." I refused, and he eventually stopped messaging. A couple of days later, I was still feeling under the weather and decided to take a nap. I woke up to the sound of knocking, soft at first, then louder. I checked my phone and saw a message from Ethan. "I hope you're feeling better. I'm outside." My stomach sank. I never gave him my address. I peeked out the window, and there he was, standing on my porch with a small bag in his hand. He looked wrong. His friendly demeanor from the app was gone, replaced by something dark, almost predatory. I called the police, whispering into the phone as he continued to knock. When they arrived, Ethan was gone, but the bag was still on my porch. Inside were pills, a bottle of water, and a note. It read, "I just wanted to take care of you. Why didn't you let me in?" I deleted every dating app after that, but sometimes I still get texts from unknown numbers. The most recent one said, "I'll find you again someday." I matched with a guy named Dylan on a dating app. He seemed normal, cute, good sense of humor, worked in finance. He wasn't overly pushy, which I appreciated, and we hit it off quickly. After a few days of chatting, he asked me out to dinner. The date went great. Dylan was charming in person, just like in his messages. We laughed, shared stories, and when the check came, he insisted on paying. He walked me to my car afterward, and everything felt easy. But as I drove home, I noticed something strange. My app sent a notification. Profile no longer available. Confused, I opened it up. Dylan's profile had vanished. No chats, no matches, no history. It was as if he'd never been on the app at all. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe he'd deleted his account. But later that night, I got a text from an unknown number. "Did you make it home safe?" I replied cautiously, asking who it was. "It's Dylan," he said. "You didn't think I'd forget about you, did you?" I felt uneasy. How had he gotten my number? I never gave it to him. The next day, I started noticing things. My car's glove box had been rummaged through, and my spare house key, which I always kept inside, was missing. I texted Dylan to confront him, but there was no response. That night, I locked all my doors and tried to sleep. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to a faint creak outside my bedroom door. My stomach sank. I reached for my phone to call the police, but before I could dial, I got another text. "You look so peaceful when you sleep." The police found no sign of forced entry, and Dylan's number was disconnected. It was only when I checked my front door the next morning that I found it. My missing spare key, placed neatly on the welcome mat. I was swiping through profiles late one night when I accidentally matched with someone I wasn't interested in. His name was Mark, and his profile was odd. No pictures, just a blurry image of what looked like a field at night. His bio simply read, "Let's meet." I thought about unmatching, but before I could, he sent a message. "You're beautiful." I didn't reply, but the messages kept coming. "I know where we should meet. I'll make it worth your while." Creeped out, I unmatched him and went to bed. The next day, I got a notification from the app. New match. It was Mark again. This time, his profile picture was different. It was a blurry image of what looked like my college campus. Panic set in. I unmatched him again and deleted the app. That night, I was studying late in the library when I noticed a man sitting a few tables away, staring at me. He had his phone out, and every time I moved, his eyes followed. I tried to convince myself it wasn't him until I got a text from an unknown number. "Why'd you unmatch me again?" I packed up and left, practically running back to my dorm. When I got there, I found something on my bed, a single Polaroid photo of me from earlier that night, sitting in the library. On the back it said, "Next time, don't swipe left." I was new to the city and decided to try dating apps to meet people. That's how I met Emily. She was gorgeous, funny, and we clicked instantly. After chatting for a week, she invited me over to her apartment for dinner. Her place was nice. Too nice, honestly, for someone who claimed to be just getting by. She laughed it off, saying she lucked into a rent-controlled unit. The evening was great. She cooked, we talked, and I couldn't believe how well we got along. But as the night went on, I noticed something strange. There were two plates in the sink, clearly used, but Emily insisted she'd been alone all day. I joked, "Roommate?" Her smile faltered for a moment before she quickly said no. Later, as I was getting ready to leave, I went to use the bathroom. On the way back, I passed a closed door. Out of curiosity, I tried the handle. It was locked. Emily appeared behind me, her expression suddenly cold. "That's just a storage room," she said, guiding me back to the living room. I left shortly after, but something didn't sit right. I couldn't stop thinking about the locked door. The next day, I decided to search Emily's name online. What I found made my blood run cold. Her apartment had been featured in a news article 6 months earlier. Her former roommate, a woman named Claire, had gone missing under suspicious circumstances. The article included a photo of Emily and Claire together. But the Emily in the picture wasn't the woman I had met. I blocked her on the app, but a week later, I got a text from an unknown number. "Had fun the other night. Let's do it again." When I looked up from my phone, I noticed something outside my window. A woman was standing across the street, smiling. It was Emily, or whoever she really was. I had been on the app for a while and finally matched with someone who stood out. His name was Adam. He was different from the usual guys. Instead of gym selfies, his profile showed him hiking, painting, and rescuing stray animals. His messages were thoughtful, and after a week of chatting, I agreed to meet him. We decided on a small, artsy cafe downtown. When I arrived, Adam was already there, sitting by the window. He was even more charming in person, polite, attentive, and genuinely interested in everything I said. But as we talked, something about him felt off. It wasn't anything obvious, just little things. Like how he always redirected the conversation back to me, avoiding details about himself, or how he seemed to know things I hadn't told him yet. Like my favorite coffee order or the fact that I'd recently adopted a dog. After the date, he walked me to my car and handed me a small gift, a tiny, intricately carved wooden box. "A little keepsake," he said with a smile. At home, I opened the box and found a lock of hair inside. My stomach turned. It was blonde, just like mine. The next day, I texted Adam, asking about the hair. He claimed it was a joke, but his tone felt strange, almost mocking. I decided to block him and move on. A week later, I came home to find a package on my doorstep. No return address. Inside was another wooden box. This time, it held something even more disturbing, a Polaroid photo of me from our date, taken from a distance. On the back, it read, "You're perfect for my collection." I matched with a guy named Nathan who looked eerily familiar. His profile picture showed him smiling in front of a landmark I'd visited recently. At first, I thought I might have seen him there, but he insisted we'd never met before. Nathan was funny and quick-witted, and after chatting for a while, I agreed to meet him at a local park. He arrived wearing the exact same outfit as in his profile picture, which struck me as odd, but I brushed it off. As we walked and talked, I started noticing unsettling details. He knew things about me I hadn't shared on the app, like the town where I grew up and the college I attended. When I asked how he knew, he laughed and said, "You must have told me, right?" But I hadn't. It wasn't until later that I remembered why he looked so familiar. A year ago, I'd gone on a date with someone who looked just like him. Same face, same voice, even the same laugh. But that guy's name was Jason, and he'd ghosted me after one date. When I brought this up to Nathan, he froze. His expression changed, and for the first time, he looked nervous. "That's crazy," he said, laughing awkwardly. I didn't believe him. After that date, I tried to find Nathan's profile again, but it had disappeared. Then a week later, I got a message from a new profile. Same pictures, same bio, but with a different name. I reported the account, but I still wonder, was it really Nathan? Or was it Jason, pretending to be someone else to get another chance? One night I was bored and swiping through the app when I matched with a guy named Ben. His profile was simple, almost too generic, but his message came through instantly. "I've been waiting for you." I laughed it off as a cheesy pickup line and replied. Ben was quick to ask personal questions, where I lived, what I did for work. But he didn't offer much about himself. His responses felt calculated, like he was trying to extract information. Despite my reservations, I agreed to a video call before meeting in person. When the call started, his screen was black. "I'm having camera issues," he said, his voice low and calm, "but I can see you just fine." The way he said it made my skin crawl. I asked him to turn his camera on, but he ignored the request, instead commenting on things around my room, the books on my shelf, the posters on my wall. I ended the call and blocked him immediately. That night, as I lay in bed, I started hearing faint tapping sounds on my window. I lived on the second floor, so I tried to convince myself it was just the wind or a tree branch. But then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Why'd you end the call? I thought we were having fun." My blood ran cold. I peeked out the window, and there he was, standing in the shadows below, staring up at me. He waved. The police arrived quickly, but by the time they searched the area, Ben was gone. The app account had been deleted, and his number was disconnected. The next day, I found a note taped to my window. "You'll swipe on me again.